Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Saints are back on the practice field on Wednesday. Our buddy Jeff Duncan, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, good enough to join us, talk a little who dat. Jeff, always appreciate it, man. How are you?
Doing good, Matt. Not quite as temperate and climate here as we had out in California, but we'll make it work.
We choose to live here, brother. We love it, but we choose it. And every time you go and you come back, you're like, we choose it. We choose it. We choose it. Hey, let me ask you about the weird Jimmy Graham situation. Just the off the field stuff, and then obviously just his opportunity on the field. Just take it and I mean, you covered Jimmy when he was here the first time. Just take it and go. What do you make of it?
Well, it's certainly an unusual story. I mean, I don't think we know the whole story yet. Obviously, Jimmy Graham returned to practice today. He looked great at practice, by the way, but not available to the media, which is no surprise. At some point, he's going to have to face the music and talk about it, I'm sure. But I've heard he's very embarrassed and ashamed. So I think the phrase "shook up" is what I've heard from a few sources. So at some point, I guess we'll get to the bottom of it. But it's certainly concerning. The people I talked to with the Saints say it was something totally, out. Nothing in their background checks on him had ever come up with any kind of incident medically or, off the field in any way. So their main concern was for his health, first and foremost. And I think there's still some questions that need to be answered about, how this fits into his football playing career. And does it? Is it safe for him to play? So far we haven't gotten a lot of answers, to be honest with you.
Do you think that Jimmy Graham, if he's healthy and everything, is he a roster lock, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
This is what I say. I don't know that, but I think knowing him and Jimmy Sexton as his agent is a very strong relationship with Mickey Loomis. I don't think he would even come to camp if he wasn't going to make the team.
Okay.
I don't think they gave him a promise, but these things are done behind closed doors, and I think it somehow he got pretty much some kind of commitment that he was going to be on this roster. I don't think he came here to try out, put it that way. And look, he's looked good. I mean, this is something interesting, Matt. I mean, I've heard that he told us he's down around 250. He played at 280 when he was with the Bears. He's much lighter. And I think, look, as we all age, right, you want to take the pounds off.
Yeah.
And that should help him with his bulky knees and things. He told me he's in the best shape of his life, doing a ton of cycling off the field. It's kind of changed his life, he said. So I think he's still going to be a role player on this team. He's not going to be a frontline player, but I think there's value to having him on the roster.
Take pressure off them joints, brother. I know the feeling, man. Give me some yoga and some Pilates. Give me that low impact stuff.
Exactly. That's what he learned.
Jeff Duncan is with us. Hey, Jeff, the joint practices with the Texans this week are canceled. What's the most consequential part of that decision, if anything?
Well, I think we don't get to see some of the guys that need the reps. They need every rep they can get. So Trevor Penning, for example, at left tackle, I mean, he got a ton of good work going against Khalil Mack. And Joey Bosa out there in L.A. He's going to miss out. He needs every rep he can get. There's a lot of players like that, right? Brian Brzee, they need to work against the real guys. You don't learn anything in a preseason game going against a third string guy that might be, at the grocery checkout in 2 weeks, right? You need to learn what's it going to be like on Sundays, especially for someone like Penning, who's going to be a key player on this team. They need as much work as they can against the ones, and that's what you get in the joint practices. I mean, the coaches will tell you they get way more out of that than they do these preseason games. So it's definitely a loss as far as evaluation is concerned. But I'll be honest with you, Matt, they got so much out of that last week working against the Chargers. I think the coaching staff's probably got a really good bead on who at least 50 of the 53 at this point.
So then I'm going to come back to those final three in a second. That's interesting. But so what then is the plan? What do you expect the plan to be for this third preseason game then?
I think they'll hold out the main guys, the Derek Carrs of the world, and it'll be just targeted players that they need to see a little more from. We saw a little of that, right, in the game the other night with Lynn Bowden. You know, they're trying to find out who's going to be the return guy, especially with Rashid Shaheed still out. You know, Rashid Shaheed, is he going to be one of these guys, a lot like Deontay Hardy, that, you know, you have to kind of monitor and manage the miles on the tread, right? So they need to find if they need a return man, who's it going to be? Can John Trey Kirkland work his way into the mix? I'm sure he's going to get heavy usage. It's going to be targeted players at positions that they're still trying to find those final roster spots.
So that's interesting. And Jeff Duncan's our guest on Twitter at @JeffDuncan_. Y'all give him a follow. Make sure you get the right Jeff Duncan, as we always remind you. So you said roster spots 51 to 53. So who then are the guys, or is there a position grouping that you're looking at going, okay, that's where those final spots are going to be decided over this next week?
I think it's more like this. Instead of position, think of it this way. In the past, they've kept 5 or 6 receivers, just depending on the year, the depth at that position. You just don't know. Is A.T. Perry better than your 9th lineman, offensive lineman? It's less the position than it is the value to the roster. Is your 6th linebacker going to contribute more on special teams than A.T. Perry would? That's really how these decisions are made. Or can we pass A.T. Perry through waivers and not worry about him getting fluffed? We want to put him on the practice squad. Or is there someone out there that we know might have interest in him and he's got value? I mean, the Green Bay Packers learned the ultimate lesson the hard way on Taysom Hill. Yeah. I mean, Mike McCarthy wanted to keep Taysom Hill. He was worried if they put him on waivers, he'd get claimed. Ted Thompson disagreed, and we know the rest is history, right? So that's your main concern.
Man, Jeff, I don't know. I can't see any way they try to run A.T. Perry through waivers. He's got to make this team.
Yeah, I say that every year, and then every year a guy gets through and doesn't get claimed. The A.T. Perrys of the world, there's maybe one of those guys in every camp, it seems like, you know, that we all think is, oh my gosh, you know, he's looking great. He's got this ability. And then you look at every roster and they've got a guy kind of like that. But you may be right. I mean, he's flashed so much. He's got so much upside, I think, that you might not want to risk it, right? Mm-hmm. All it takes is one team, and you regret it.
You know, we always tend to talk, Jeff, about those, the A.T. Perry, the Lynn Bowden, as you mentioned, whoever that download. But there's always some guys as well that are surprise cuts that have been guys on the roster before. So, I mean, I look at guys this year like Calvin Throckmorton, like Zach Bond, like Tre'Quan Smith. Like, are those guys safe? I mean, who are the guys that have been a part of this team that really are going to be sweating out these cuts?
I think you just named a few of them. I mean, I don't necessarily have any intel that anybody like that is going to get released, but there always is one or two that surprises you. And I think health factors in a lot into this equation. I mean, right now, Andres Pete is basically with the second team. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been available the last few years. What you run into with a lot of guys like that, I think if Andres Pete didn't have such if the Saints didn't have so much invested in him contractually with the restructures over the years where they're almost tied to him, I think they would definitely think about releasing Andres Pete. But they're kind of stuck with him. That's the downside, Matt, of all this salary cap gymnastics that's been going on over the years. Everyone tends to let the Saints off the hook. Oh, they're magicians. They get under the cap. Everybody in the league knows how to do these things. There's consequences to it, and some of these are just this. You're stuck with a guy like Andres Pete who's kind of been beaten out for his starting spot. He really doesn't bring a lot of value, but you're stuck with his contract, so you end up with one less roster spot than you'd like to have because of that. So I think someone like him definitely could have been vulnerable, but I think they'll stick with him. Tre'Quan Smith's been hurt again. I think he's vulnerable. And look, you can make this argument. We were talking about this on the sideline today at practice. I don't have any intel on this, so I'm just throwing it out there. But why wouldn't Jameis Winston be vulnerable? Jake Hayner's played very well. Derek Carr has shown that he's incredibly durable in his 9-year career. Winston has not had a good camp in any way. He's had a few flash plays in preseason, but you have the luxury of Taysom Hill on the roster. If you did, heaven forbid, have to replace Carr because of injury, you've got a guy that's proven he's won in the league as a starting quarterback, a veteran, if you don't feel comfortable with Haener. But I think Winston also falls in that same category, Matt. They've restructured his deal. They might be stuck with him salary cap-wise, but I don't think he's earned a spot on the 53. I think they're kind of stuck with him.
Well, now that is fascinating, Jeff, because that solves your problem of having to keep a third quarterback and having one less very valuable roster spot. Now, I hadn't considered the possibility of Jameis not being here. I don't know how realistic of a possibility you think that is, but that's a pretty fascinating one. Like, do you think that there is, like, if you put a percentage on it, like, I mean, do you feel that one way or another about that?
Yeah, that's why I hesitated to even talk about it, because I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
But if you're sitting there talking about the final 53 and who's performed well in camp, not just in preseason games, but camp every day in practice, I don't think Jameis Winston's one of the 53 best.
Okay.
I really don't.
Wow.
Especially when you have the luxury of Taysom Hill.
Yeah, that's
you
that's
have
the key.
that. Yeah, that's the key, because all of a sudden that's an extra roster spot. That you can gain if you're worried about A.T. Perry, like we talked about. And I think it's a valid concern. Do you want to expose him, when you don't have to? But Jameis has not played well. I think he would even tell you that. And Jake Haener's opened eyes, especially with the way he played on Sunday, I thought.
Okay, last thing for you. If I asked you, here as camp winds down and they move toward roster cuts and the start of the regular season, there's still obviously a third preseason game to go, but if I asked you, Jeff, if you had one big sort of overarching takeaway about this 2023 iteration of the Saints to this point, what would you say it is? If I had asked you for what's the lead on these Saints, what is it right now?
I think it's Dennis Allen. I think Dennis Allen has come into his own in the last 10 months or so. I think he learned valuable lessons last year with, how not to be. And I think he's a different coach this year. He's much more emotional. I think he's much more confident. I think he feels very good about this team. He's got his own quarterback here, handpicked, and Derek Carr. He's overhauled the coaching staff. This is his team. It's not the Sean Payton status quo anymore. And you can see it with the way he carries himself. And I hear in meetings, he's much more confident, much more, I think, himself and comfortable in himself. And I think that is great news for Saints fans, because I think that was a question mark going into this year. I don't think it's a question mark anymore about can he lead this team. I think it's clearly Dennis Allen's team. Now, whether that's good enough, we're going to find out, but it's not going to be because he's still straddling the fence.
Always insightful. Jeff Duncan, he's on Twitter at @JeffDuncan_. Give him a follow there. Of course, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and also the author of Peyton and Breeze, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. He literally wrote the book on Sean Payton and Drew Brees. You can pick it up wherever you get books. Jeff, we appreciate it as always, man. Thank you for the time.
Anytime, Matt. Take care, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.